The storm, before the calm Chloe Bennet, gripped the steering wheel tighter as her rental car climbed the winding coastal road toward the Thornfield estate. Rain pelted the windshield in sheets, and the Atlantic Ocean roared somewhere beyond the curtain of gray. She had coordinated over 200 events in her 7 years as a wedding planner, but something about tonight felt different. Maybe it was the storm. Maybe it was the reputation of the man whose home she was about to enter. Jackson Thornfield was a legend in tech circles. At 38, he had built Thornfield Industries from a college dorm room idea into a global empire worth $40 billion. Business magazines called him a genius. His employees called him demanding. The society pages called him Chicago's most eligible bachelor, though the photos always showed him alone, his expression unreadable behind designer sunglasses. Arrival at the edge of the world, the mansion appeared through the rain like something from a Gothic novel. 3 stories of weathered stone and glass perched on the cliffs, waves crashing against the rocks below. He had seen luxury before, but this was different. This was power made visible. Isolation turned into architecture. She parked under the covered entrance and checked her appearance in the mirror one last time. Her auburn hair was pulled into a neat bun, her navy dress professional but elegant. She had learned early in her career that confidence was half the battle when dealing with wealthy clients. The door opened before she could knock. A woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a crisp uniform smiled at her. "You must be Miss Bennet. I'm Helen, the house manager. Please come in. Mr. Thornfield is expecting you in the ballroom." First encounters the interior was breathtaking. Marble floors reflected the light from crystal chandeliers. Modern art hung on walls beside antique tapestries. It was a home that couldn't decide if it wanted to embrace the past or the future. So it held both in uncomfortable tension. Chloe followed Helen through corridors that seemed to stretch forever until they reached a set of double doors. Helen pushed them open, revealing a ballroom that took up the entire east wing. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the storm-tossed ocean, and Chloe could taste salt in the air. He was standing by the windows, hands in his pockets, staring out at the gray water. Yet even from behind, Jackson Thornfield commanded attention. Tall and lean in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car, he radiated an energy that made the vast room feel smaller. "Mr. Thornfield," Chloe said, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. "I'm Chloe Bennet from Blissful Moments Events. Thank you for trusting us with your charity gala." He turned slowly, and Chloe felt the impact of his full attention like a physical force. His eyes were dark green, the color of the ocean during a storm. His face was all sharp angles and stern lines, handsome in a way that seemed almost angry. There's no smile, no warmth of welcome, Miss Bennet. His voice was deep and controlled. "You're 20 minutes late. Sparks fly." Chloe felt her spine straighten. The storm made the coastal road dangerous. "I drove at a safe speed rather than risk an accident. I don't pay for excuses. I pay for results." The dismissive tone ignited something in Chloe's chest. She had dealt with difficult clients before, but there was something about his arrogance that pushed past her professional patience. "With all due respect, Mr. Thornfield, you're paying for my expertise in creating memorable events. That expertise includes arriving alive to actually do the job." The silence that followed was electric. Jackson's eyes narrowed and Chloe saw a muscle twitch in his jaw. For a moment, she wondered if she had just talked herself out of the biggest contract of her career. Then something unexpected happened. The corner of his mouth lifted, just barely, in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "Fair enough," he said. "Let me show you what I have in mind." Dancing on the edge for the next 2 hours, they walked through the ballroom and adjoining spaces. Jackson had clear visions for every detail: the placement of tables, the lighting scheme, the flow of guests from cocktails to dinner to dancing. His attention to detail was impressive, but his refusal to consider any alternative suggestions was infuriating. "The centerpieces should be white roses exclusively," he said, marking something on the tablet he carried. "White roses are beautiful," Chloe agreed carefully. "But for a spring gala by the ocean, we could incorporate some blue hydrangeas and soft greenery. It would tie the indoor space to the natural beauty outside." Specified white roses. "You did, but then that's what we'll have." Chloe stopped walking. They were near the windows again. close enough that she could see the small scar above. His left eyebrow, the only imperfection in his otherwise severe features. "Mr. Thornfield, can I ask you something?" He looked at her with those stormy green eyes. "What? Why did you hire an event planner if you're going to make every decision yourself?" The question clearly caught him off guard. His expression shifted, revealing something underneath the control, something that looked almost like uncertainty. "Because," he said slowly, "running a successful event requires coordination. I don't have time to manage personally." "Then let me coordinate," Chloe said, taking a step closer. "Let me do what you hired me to do. Trust that I know my job as well as you know yours." The moment everything changed, the word trust seemed to land between them like a stone dropped in still water. Jackson's whole body tensed, and Chloe saw something dark flash across his face. "Trust is earned, Miss Bennett, not given freely." "I agree completely," she replied. "So let me earn it. Give me one decision. If you don't like the result, we'll do everything else exactly your way." They stood there, barely 3 feet apart, the storm raging outside and something equally turbulent building in the space between them. Chloe could smell his cologne, something expensive with notes of cedar and leather. She could see the way his chest rose and fell with each controlled breath. "One decision," he said finally. "The centerpieces." "Fine. Surprise me, Miss Bennett. But if I don't like what you create, you'll fire me and tell everyone in Rhode Island that I'm impossible to work with," Chloe finished. "I understand the stakes." Something changed in his expression then. The harsh lines softened almost imperceptibly. And when he looked at her, really looked at her, Chloe felt heat bloom in her cheeks. "You're not afraid of me," he observed. "Should I be? Most people are. I'm not most people." Thunder rolls, the lights flickered as thunder crashed overhead, so loud it rattled the windows. Instinctively, Chloe stepped closer to Jackson, and his hand came up to steady her elbow. The touch was brief, barely a second, but it sent electricity racing up her arm. They both froze, awareness crackling between them like the lightning outside. His hand dropped, but his eyes stayed locked on hers. "Miss Bennett," he said, his voice rougher than before. "Mr. Thornfield," she whispered back. The moment stretched, loaded with possibility and danger. Then Jackson stepped back, breaking the spell. "It's late," he said, his professional mask sliding back into place. "Len will show you to a guest room. The storm is too dangerous for you to drive back to town tonight. That's not necessary. It wasn't a request." And there it was again, that autocratic tone that made her want to argue, just on principle.
"I'm bad."
But when she looked out the windows, at the storm that had intensified to near hurricane force, she had to admit he had a point. "Thank you," she said stiffly. "Don't thank me yet," Jackson replied, and there was something in his voice that sent a shiver down her spine. "You might regret accepting my hospitality before this is over." As Helen led her away to a guest room in the West Wing, Chloe glanced back once. Jackson was standing by the windows again, silhouetted against the storm, looking like a man at war with himself. She didn't know it yet, but he was thinking the same thing about her. For the first time in 5 years, Jackson Thornfield had felt something when someone touched him, and it terrified him more than any business deal ever had. The storm raged on through the night. But inside the Thornfield estate, a different kind of tempest was just beginning. Morning after the storm, Chloe woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory rushed back. The storm, the mansion, Jackson Thornfield's intense green eyes watching her like she was a puzzle he needed to solve. She checked her phone. 7 messages from her business partner Nina Washington, all variations of "Girl, are you alive? And did the billionaire eat you for breakfast?" Chloe smiled despite herself and texted back that she was fine. The guest room was stunning in daylight. Soft blue walls, antique furniture that belonged in a museum, and windows that framed a view of the ocean, now calm and sparkling under morning sun. It was hard to believe the same water had been so violent just hours before. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Helen entered with a tray of coffee and pastries, her warm smile a contrast to the cold elegance of the house. "Good morning. Dear Mr. Thornfield left for his office an hour ago, but he asked me to make sure you had breakfast before you drove back to the city." Chloe felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. She told herself it was professional frustration at not being able to discuss the event plans. But she knew she was lying. 2 weeks of silence back in Chicago. Chloe threw herself into work. She designed centerpieces that blended white roses with soft blue hydrangeas and silvery eucalyptus, exactly as she had envisioned. She coordinated with caterers, musicians, and lighting designers. She did everything a professional event planner should do, but she couldn't stop thinking about Jackson Troll. It wasn't just his looks. Though she would be lying if she said those stormy green eyes hadn't haunted her dreams, it was something else. The glimpses of vulnerability beneath his controlled exterior, the way his hand had trembled just slightly when he touched her elbow, the loneliness that seemed to radiate from him like cold from ice. Nina noticed, of course. Best friends always did. You've checked your email 14 times in the last hour, Nina observed, looking up from her own laptop in their shared office. That's excessive even for you. I'm waiting for client approvals, Chloe said, not quite meeting her friend's knowing gaze. And does this client happen to be a tall, brooding billionaire who looks like he stepped out of a romance novel? Nina girl, I've known you since college. I've seen you handle Bridezilla's impossible mothers-in-law and venues that caught fire the day before weddings. I've never seen you this distracted, Chloe sighed, closing her laptop. It doesn't matter. He hasn't called, hasn't emailed. For all I know, he's forgotten I exist, or Nina said gently. He's just as confused as you are about whatever happened in that mansion. The waterfront restaurant, the call came on a Thursday afternoon, 2 weeks and 3 days after the storm, not from Jackson, but from his assistant, requesting Chloe's presence at a dinner meeting to finalize gala details. Location: the Lighthouse, an exclusive waterfront restaurant in Newport. Time: 8 o'clock Saturday evening. Chloe's heart raced as she confirmed, trying to sound professional and unconcerned. She failed on both counts. Saturday evening found her standing in front of her closet, surrounded by rejected outfits. Nina had come over to help, which mostly meant offering commentary while drinking wine. The green dress, Nina declared. It matches your eyes and makes you look like a goddess. This is a business meeting. Right. A business meeting with a man who made you forget how to form coherent sentences. Wear the green dress. Chloe wore the green dress. Unexpected company, the lighthouse was perched on the edge of the harbor, its windows offering views of yachts bobbing in their slips and the sun beginning its descent toward the horizon. Chloe arrived exactly on time, her professional armor firmly in place despite the dress that definitely wasn't professional. The hostess led her to a private table on the terrace. Jackson was already there, looking unfairly handsome in a dark blue suit with no tie. His hair was slightly mussed as if he had been running his hands through it, and there were shadows under his eyes that suggested he had been sleeping as poorly as she had. He stood when he saw her, and something flickered across his face, too quick to read. "Miss Bennet," he said. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Thornfield." Chloe settled into the chair he pulled out for her, hyper-aware of how close his hands came to her shoulders. "I brought updated plans for your review, of course." But he didn't reach for the folder she placed on the table. Instead, he poured her a glass of wine from the bottle that was already breathing. "How have you been?" The personal question surprised her. "Busy? And you?" "The same." He paused, looking out at the water. "I owe you an apology." Chloe's eyebrows rose. "For what?" "For disappearing after that night. It was unprofessional." Was that all it was? The words escaped before she could stop them. Unprofessional? Jackson's eyes snapped to hers, and the intensity in them made her breath catch. "No," he said quietly. "That's not all it was." The truth emerges before Chloe could respond. A voice interrupted them. "Jackson, what a surprise." A man approached their table, tall and athletic with sandy hair and an easy smile. He wore khakis and a polo shirt, the uniform of old money trying to look casual. "Dylan Jackson," said, his voice cooling several degrees. "I didn't know you were in Newport. Just bought a summer house here." "You know how it is." Dylan's eyes shifted to Chloe, and his smile widened. "And who is this lovely lady?" "Don't tell me you're finally dating again." "This is Chloe Bennet," Jackson said stiffly. "She's planning my charity gala. Miss Bennet, Dylan Moore." Dylan extended his hand, his grip warm and friendly. A pleasure. Any woman who can get Jackson to attend a social event deserves a medal. Chloe found herself liking Dylan despite the obvious tension between the two men. There was something genuine about his enthusiasm that was refreshing. Actually, Dylan continued, I'm hosting a small gathering tomorrow afternoon. Sailing, lunch, very casual. You should both come. I'm busy, Jackson said immediately. Of course you are. You're always busy, Dylan turned to Chloe. What about you? Have you seen Newport from the water? It's spectacular. Chloe felt Jackson's gaze on her, heavy and waiting. Some instinct, maybe the same one that had made her confront him in the ballroom, made her smile at Dylan. Love to, she said, jealousy's sharp edge after Dylan left. The air between them crackled with new tension. Jackson refilled his wine glass, his movements controlled but tight. You don't have to go, he said. No. I want to. Dylan Moore is, he stopped, jaw clenching, is what? Chloe leaned forward. Friendly? Charming? Interested in showing me around Newport? Interested in more than that, if I know Dylan? The bitter edge in his voice sent a thrill through her. And why should that matter to you, Mr. Thornfield? This is a business relationship, isn't it? Jackson set down his glass with a sharp click. Is it, you tell me? You're the one who disappeared for 2 weeks without a word. Oh, I was trying to be professional. How's that working out for you? Their eyes locked, and Chloe saw something raw and unguarded in his expression. It was like watching walls crumble in real time. Terribly, he admitted. It's working terribly. Breaking down walls, the waiter arrived with their food, breaking the moment. They ate in charged silence. Every accidental brush of hands reaching for bread or wine, sending sparks through the air between them. Finally, Jackson spoke. There's something you should know about me. Chloe waited, sensing this was important. 5 years ago, I was engaged to a woman named Vanessa Carlisle. We met at a tech conference in San Francisco. She was brilliant, ambitious, everything I thought I wanted in a partner. His voice was flat, emotionless, but Chloe could hear the pain underneath. What happened? She asked gently. I found out she was using our relationship to steal proprietary technology from my company. She had been passing information to a competitor for over a year. Everything I shared with her, every vulnerability I showed, she weaponized. Chloe's hand moved instinctively to cover his on the table. Jackson, I'm so sorry. Looked down at their joined hands, and she saw his throat work as he swallowed. She didn't just betray my business. She recorded private conversations, intimate moments. When I confronted her, she threatened to release everything if I pressed charges. That's horrible. I paid her off, bought her silence, and I swore I would never let anyone that close again. He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers, until a woman with fire in her eyes stood in my ballroom and refused to be intimidated by me. Jackson, I know I have no right to ask this, he interrupted. I know I'm damaged goods. I know I'm controlling and difficult and probably impossible to be with. But please don't go sailing with Dylan Moore tomorrow. The vulnerability in his voice broke something open in her chest. Why not? Because the thought of you with him, laughing at his jokes, letting him touch you, makes me want to put my fist through a wall. And I know that's caveman and possessive and completely irrational, but it's the truth. Sharing scars, Chloe squeezed his hand. My parents died when I was 16. Car accident on the way home from my birthday dinner? Jackson's eyes widened at the sudden shift, but he stayed quiet, listening. I was supposed to be in that car. I had stayed late at a friend's house, and they were coming to pick me up. If I had been ready on time, I might be dead too, or I might have somehow prevented the accident. I'll never know. Chloe, I spent years building walls, she continued, telling myself that if I didn't need anyone, I couldn't lose anyone. I became independent to the point of isolation. My relationships were shallow because I never let anyone deep enough to hurt me. She looked up at him, tears glistening in her eyes. So I understand, Jackson. I understand being scared. I understand using control to feel safe. But I also understand that loneliness isn't protection. It's just a different kind of pain. They sat there, hands linked across the table, Two wounded people recognizing each other's scars. I'm in therapy, Jackson said suddenly. Started 2 weeks ago. Dr. Raymond Foster specializes in relationship trauma. How is it? Uncomfortable. He says I use business as a shield against intimacy. That I manufacture crises to avoid dealing with emotions. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. He's probably right. Probably? Definitely. Jackson raised her hand to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. I'm trying, Chloe. I can't promise I won't be difficult. I can't promise I won't have moments where old wounds make me say or do stupid things. But I'm trying to be better than I was. The decision. Chloe felt something shift in her chest, like a door opening after being locked for years. I'll cancel with Dylan. No, Jackson said, surprising her. Go. Enjoy the day. I have no claim on you, not yet. But when you come back, if you're willing, I'd like to take you to dinner. A real dinner, not a business meeting. A date. A date, he confirmed. If you'll risk it. Chloe studied him, this complicated, brilliant, broken man who was trying so hard to be whole again. She thought about Nina's advice, about her own fears, about all the very sensible reasons she should walk away. Then she thought about the way he looked at her, like she was both his greatest fear and his deepest hope. I'll risk it, she whispered. Sunday sailing, the next day was perfect for sailing. Dylan's yacht was impressive, and he was the perfect host, charming and attentive without being overbearing. He told funny stories about growing up in Newport society, pointed out mansions and their scandals, and made Chloe laugh more than she had in weeks. It should have been perfect. He was handsome, successful, uncomplicated, everything a sensible woman would want, but all Chloe could think about was Jackson. The way his rare smiles transformed his entire face. The vulnerability in his eyes when he talked about his past, the careful hope in his voice when he asked her to dinner. You're thinking about him, Dylan observed as they anchored for lunch in a quiet cove. Chloe started. What? Jackson? You've been checking your phone all morning? He smiled, but it was tinged with resignation. I've known Jackson since prep school. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you last night. We barely know each other. Some connections don't need time. They just are. Dylan poured them both champagne. He's difficult, you know. Brilliant, but damaged. Being with him won't be easy, I know, but you're going to try anyway. It wasn't a question. Chloe looked out at the sparkling water, thinking about storms and calms, about walls and bridges, about fear and courage. Yes, she said. I think I am. Dylan raised his glass. Then I hope you're strong enough for both of you. Because Jackson Thornfield is worth fighting for, even if he doesn't believe it himself. Evening promises that night. Jackson picked her up at 7. He wore dark jeans and a white button-down with the sleeves rolled up, more casual than she had ever seen him. He looked younger, less guarded, though she could see the nervous tension in his shoulders. How was sailing? He asked as he opened the car door for her. Beautiful. Dylan's a good guy, he is. Jackson closed the door and walked around to the driver's side. When he slid in beside her, he didn't start the engine immediately. Instead, he turned to face her. Did he kiss you? The direct question caught her off guard. No. Did you want him to? No. Something eased in Jackson's expression. Good. Because I've been thinking about kissing you for 2 weeks, and I'm not sure my ego could handle the competition. Chloe laughed, the sound breaking the remaining tension. Where are we going? Somewhere I haven't been in 5 years. Somewhere I only take people who matter. He drove them up the coast to a small beach house, simple and weathered, perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. Inside was nothing like his mansion. Comfortable furniture, books everywhere. Photos of a younger Jackson with people who must have been his family. This was my parents' place, he explained, lighting candles since the electricity was off. They died when I was 25. Plane crash. I couldn't sell it, but I couldn't bear to be here either. Too many memories. Chloe understood. Why bring me here? Jackson moved closer, his eyes searching hers in the candlelight. Because I'm tired of running from ghosts. Because you were brave enough to share your pain with me. Because I want to try being the man I was before fear made me hard. He cupped her face gently, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. Because when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to want something more than I fear losing it. Jackson, Chloe breathed. Tell me to stop if this is too fast, he whispered, his lips inches from hers. Tell me if you need more time. But Chloe was done being cautious. She closed the distance between them, and when their lips met, it felt like coming home after a long journey through winter into spring. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, both of them learning the shape of this new territory. Then Jackson's arms came around her, pulling her close, and the kiss deepened into something that spoke of longing and promise and hope when they finally pulled apart. Both breathing hard, Jackson rested his forehead against hers. I'm going to mess this up, he said. Probably multiple times, I know. Going to be jealous and possessive, and have moments where I push you away because being vulnerable terrifies me. I know that too. So, why are you still here? Chloe smiled, her hands framing his face. Because you're worth it. Because I see who you're trying to become, not just who you were. Because maybe we can heal each other. Hush. Jackson kissed her again, softer this time, reverent. I don't deserve you. Probably not, she agreed. But you're stuck with me anyway. They spent the rest of the evening talking, sharing stories, building bridges between their wounded hearts. And when Jackson drove her home that night, something had fundamentally shifted between them. The walls weren't completely down. Trust would take time, but they had made a beginning. Sometimes that was the bravest thing of all. 6 weeks later, Chloe stood in the Thornfield Estate ballroom, watching the final preparations for the charity gala. White roses and blue hydrangeas created centerpieces that looked like captured ocean waves. String lights twinkled like stars. Everything was perfect, exactly as she had envisioned. Jackson came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and pressing a kiss to her temple. It still surprised her sometimes, these casual displays of affection from a man who had once been so guarded. It's beautiful, he murmured. You were right about the hydrangeas. I'm always right about flowers, Chloe teased, leaning back against his chest. Among other things, his voice grew serious. I have something to tell you. Something I should have told you yesterday, but I was waiting for the right moment. Chloe turned in his arms, seeing anxiety flicker across his face. What is it? Before he could answer, Nina burst into the ballroom, her eyes wide with excitement and concern. Girl, we need to talk. Now. The revelation in a side room. Nina pulled out her phone, showing Chloe a business news article. The headline made Chloe's heart stop. Thornfield Industries CEO walks away from billion-dollar international deal. The Paris tech merger, Nina said. He was negotiating for 8 months. The contract was worth $2.7 billion and would have established Thornfield Industries as the dominant player in European markets. Chloe scanned the article, her hands trembling. The deal would have required Jackson to relocate to Paris for 18 months, with the possibility of permanent expansion. He turned it down yesterday, Nina continued. No explanation. The tech world is going crazy trying to figure out why. Chloe looked up at her friend, pieces clicking into place. He knew I couldn't leave Chicago. My business, my life, everything is here. He chose you, Nina said softly. He chose you over billions. Confrontation and confession. Chloe found Jackson in his office, staring out the window at the ocean. He turned when she entered, and she saw in his eyes that he knew she had found out. You turned down the Paris deal, she said without preamble. Yes, $2.7 billion. Money I don't need for a life I don't want anymore. Chloe crossed the room until she stood in front of him. Jackson, you can't make decisions like that without talking to me. I know. He reached for her hands. But I wasn't making it for you. I was making it for me. I don't understand. Jackson took a deep breath, and she saw him gathering courage. 6 weeks ago, Dr. Foster asked me what I wanted my life to look like in 5 years. I couldn't answer. All I could see was an empty mansion and business deals that meant nothing. He squeezed her hands gently. Then he asked me to imagine one person I wanted to share my life with. Someone I could be completely honest with. Someone who challenged me and made me want to be better. Jackson, it was you. Chloe, it's been you since the moment you stood in that ballroom and refused to be intimidated. The Paris deal would have taken me away for 18 months, maybe longer. And I realized I didn't want to spend 18 months or even 18 days building an empire that means nothing if I'm alone in it. Tears spilled down Chloe's cheeks. You should have told me. We could have talked about it, found a solution. There was no solution I wanted more than staying here with you. Building something real, something that matters. He wiped her tears with his thumbs. I'm not saying this to pressure you. I know we've only been together 6 weeks. I know it's fast, but I also know what I want, and that's you. In my life, in my home, in my future. The reporter returns a knock interrupted them. Helen appeared, looking uncomfortable. Sir, there's a reporter here. Laura Kim from Forbes. She says it's urgent and concerns Miss Bennett. Jackson's expression hardened. Tell her I'll talk to her, Chloe said firmly. This involves me. Laura Kim was waiting in the library, her sharp eyes missing nothing, as Chloe entered with Jackson close behind. Miss Bennett, Mr. Thornfield, Laura greeted them. Thank you for seeing me. I'll be direct. I'm writing a follow-up piece on Mr. Thornfield's decision to abandon the Paris deal. Multiple sources have suggested your relationship influenced this choice. My personal life isn't your business, Jackson said coldly. It is when it affects a publicly traded company, Laura countered. Your shareholders deserve to know if the CEO is making multi-billion-dollar decisions based on romantic interests rather than sound business strategy. Chloe felt Jackson tense beside her, ready to unleash his formidable anger. She put a hand on his arm, stopping him. Ms. Kim, Chloe said calmly, you're asking the wrong question. You should be asking why a brilliant businessman who has spent 15 years building an empire suddenly realized that success means nothing without personal fulfillment. Laura's eyebrows rose. And what's your answer? Because he's smart enough to know that some opportunities come once in a lifetime. Business deals will always be there. But finding someone who sees you, really sees you and loves you anyway? That's rare. That's worth protecting. So you're confirming the decision was influenced by your relationship? Jackson spoke before Chloe could answer. The decision was influenced by my therapist, Dr. Raymond Foster, who helped me understand that I was using work to avoid living. It was influenced by my late parents who taught me that family matters more than fortune. And yes, it was influenced by Chloe, who showed me that I was building a prison instead of a life. He moved closer to Chloe, taking her hand. I turned down the Paris deal because I finally understood what I was working for. Not to prove something to myself or the world, but to build a foundation for a life worth living. And that life is here. The gala that evening, the ballroom filled with Chicago's elite. The charity gala was everything Chloe had promised. Elegant, memorable, flawlessly executed. But she barely noticed the perfection she had created. All she could see was Jackson, moving through the crowd with new ease, stopping to really talk to people instead of just networking. When the dancing began, he found her and pulled her onto the floor. Thank you, he said as they swayed to the music. For what? For standing up to that reporter? For understanding? For being patient with me while I figure out how to be in a relationship after 5 years of hiding? Chloe smiled up at him. You're doing pretty well so far, am I? He looked uncertain, vulnerable in a way that made her heart ache. Because I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For you to realize you could do so much better than a damaged billionaire with trust issues. Jackson Thornfield, Chloe said firmly. You are brilliant, generous, and brave enough to change. Yes, you're sometimes controlling. Yes, you have moments where fear makes you push people away. But you're also trying every single day to be better than you were yesterday. That's all anyone can ask. Vanessa's return the moment shattered when a voice cut through the music. Hello, Jackson. Chloe felt Jackson freeze in her arms. She turned to see a stunning woman in a crimson dress, dark hair swept up in an elegant twist, eyes that glittered with calculated charm. Vanessa Carlyle. What are you doing here? Jackson's voice was ice. I was invited, Vanessa said smoothly. The Hendersons are old family friends. Imagine my surprise seeing you here, actually enjoying yourself. Her gaze slid to Chloe. And you must be the event planner I've heard so much about. Chloe Bennett, Chloe said. Extending her hand with professional courtesy, despite the warning bells in her head, Vanessa's handshake was brief. How lovely. Jackson, might I have a word? Privately. No, it's about the letters I've been sending. The ones you haven't answered. I burned them without reading them. Something flickered across Vanessa's face. Surprise, then anger, quickly masked. I see. Well, then I'll say what I came to say publicly. I made a mistake, Jackson. What I did was wrong, and I've spent 5 years regretting it. I want a chance to make things right. The ballroom had gone quiet, people pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. There's nothing to make right, Jackson said. What you did taught me valuable lessons about trust and self-protection. I should probably thank you. Should you? Vanessa's eyes hardened. Or should you thank me for showing you that your new girlfriend here is just another woman looking for a payday? How long before she betrays you too, Jackson? How long before that's enough? Chloe stepped forward, her voice calm but filled with steel. I don't know what happened between you two, and frankly, I don't care. But I do know that whatever you did hurt him badly enough that he spent 5 years unable to trust anyone. She moved closer to Vanessa, her eyes blazing. I also know that he's one of the bravest people I've ever met, because despite that hurt, he's choosing to try again. He's choosing vulnerability over safety, connection over isolation. And if you had any real feelings for him, you would be happy he found someone who sees how extraordinary he is. Vanessa stared at her for a long moment, then looked at Jackson. Really looked at him, seeing perhaps for the first time the changes 6 weeks with Chloe had brought. You love her, Vanessa said. And it wasn't a question. I do. Jackson replied without hesitation. The words hung in the air. Chloe's heart stopped. They hadn't said those words yet, had been carefully dancing around them, both afraid to be the first to make that leap. Vanessa smiled, but it was sad, resigned. Then I truly am too late. Goodbye, Jackson. I hope she deserves you. She walked away, disappearing into the crowd, and Chloe realized she was trembling. The declaration Jackson pulled her into a quiet corner, away from curious eyes. I meant it, he said. I love you, Chloe Bennett. I know it's fast. I know we're supposed to wait longer before saying things like that, but I've wasted enough time being afraid. I love your strength, your creativity, your refusal to accept my excuses. I love the way you see me, not just the armor I wear. Chloe felt tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. I love you too. I love your brilliant mind and wounded heart. I love how hard you're trying to heal. I love that you chose me over Paris, choose Jackson corrected. Present tense. I choose you every day. He kissed her then, deep and thorough, uncaring who might see. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, he reached into his pocket. I have something for you. It's not what you think, he added quickly, seeing her eyes widen. Not yet, anyway. But soon, if you'll have me. He pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a tiny lighthouse, to remind you that even in storms, there's always light to guide you home, he said softly. And you, Chloe, you're my light. You're my home. 3 months later, Chloe woke in Jackson's beach house, the simple one that held his parents' memories. They had been spending weekends there, slowly filling it with new memories. New joy, she found him on the deck, coffee in hand. Watching the sunrise over the ocean. You're up early, she said. Wrapping her arms around him from behind, couldn't sleep. Too excited? About what? Jackson turned in her arms, and she saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Joy, nervousness, hope, all mixed together. Dr. Foster graduated me yesterday from therapy. Jackson, that's wonderful. He said I've made remarkable progress, that I've learned to identify my triggers, communicate my fears, trust my judgment about people. He paused. He also said, I'm ready.